Hello, my name is Steve Joordens. I am Director of the Advanced Learning Technologies Lab at University of Toronto. I recently gave a number of talks at the Global Online Learning Conference in Toronto, um, sponsored by Connected North and also I4PL this year. This talk was one I gave about work integrated learning, and there was some requests for people whether I could produce a video of this talk, people who had missed the actual talk at the conference. So happy to do so. In fact, I may also do the same with other two talks that I gave at the conference, but I'm going to start here. So why don't we just jump into it? Work integrated learning. We know a lot of universities are embracing work integrated learning, and in fact, a lot of governments like work integrated learning. Just to start with a sort of definition here, it's an arrangement where students undertake learning in a workplace outside of their higher education provider. Or one jointly operated with an external partner as part of their course of study. You're going to see we're going to challenge this definition a little bit in this talk, but this is the standard definition. And so we think of things like co-op offices and et cetera, co-op placements. And the whole idea, of course, of work integrated learning is that it really allows the students to see the relevance of what they're learning in the classroom and apply that. In fact, there are a lot of benefits that people have highlighted for a sort of work integrated learning experience. So these include the following: that they help the students kind of clarify their career aspirations. First of all, they get them thinking about their career aspirations. So that's good. It tends to improve both the academic and the practical learning as they understand that what they're learning in the classroom makes sense. They learn it better, and they get the sense of why it's useful. They develop their vocational capacities a little bit, so communication skills, professional communication, things like that as they interact in a professional environment. It improves the student employability. We're giving them relevant work experience. These last two are kind of interesting. There's also evidence that suggests that there is a so-called washback effect, that as universities connect with corporate partners to find placements and such, and develop a rapport between the university and these corporations, then that can lead to other positive effects. The last point, meaningful college-industry partnership. So it literally introduces these two institutions to one another, and that can lead to all sorts of other things. So in a sense, the work-integrated learning becomes a bridge that other things can travel over. So all great. Now, of course, it's not all great. There are negatives as well, and I just show you this paper here. But you just talk to anybody in your co-op office, and they will tell you that in the formal sense, work integrated learning takes a lot of work to do well. It requires you to find placements, to develop relationships. You want to be sending good students to relevant placements. If one of those two things goes wrong, then you can sour the whole process. So it's very tricky. And in fact, when these authors looked at some of these challenges, they ended up concluding, if you look at the very last sentence, they propose a virtual work integrated learning project, which they're currently creating. So they're kind of saying, well, maybe we can simulate a work integrated learning. In this talk, we're going to talk about a different approach. So I bring this up just to kind of show you the varieties. We have the real embedded in the workplace approach. We have a sort of virtual simulated workplace approach. And then there's something else. So this something else is going to require us to bend the definition a little bit. So specifically, if we come back to this definition, the notion is that the student leaves the university and has this, embedded experience in a workplace. And obviously that is fantastic. But we're going to explore an option that allows them to capture some of the same positives without leaving their higher education provider. That is, we are going to bring the corporate world into the classroom instead. And in fact, this is where I need to mention Ripen, which is an ed tech company based in British Columbia. I first heard about Ripen when my institution, University of Toronto, became interested in enhancing access to work integrated learning. And so Ripen is a platform. I kind of think of it as one of these online matchmaking platforms, except it's matching industry partners, corporate entities with students. And so in a nutshell, the idea here is that imagine a small class. Imagine, say, about 20 students in a class, and they all have a project to do. But maybe the class is a psychology class about memory and attention, for example. And so normally we might ask them to read some scientific articles and to do some report at the end of their class. But instead here, a given student could get matched with a corporate entity who feels that students who are learning about memory and attention could be valuable to them. So for example, maybe an advertising company that's trying to create an ad that they hope will attract attention and that will be memorable. And so they might want to actually bring a student in on a challenge that involves creating such an ad. And so this could become the student's project now. They could interact with that corporate entity, learn about them, learn about their challenges in general and this challenge in specific, and then they could try to contribute to it. And their final project could be coming up with proposal for potential advertising campaigns or even factors that might be brought into advertising campaigns, etc. The cool thing is the corporate partner also evaluates that final product. So the student ends up interacting with the corporate partner on a real world problem and ultimately getting feedback from the partner. So they're getting corporate feedback as well as academic feedback. So kind of a cool middle ground. Bring the corporation into the classroom, and as their graphic here shows, there's all sorts of benefits to the students, to the employers, and to the educators when we bring these three communities together. Okay, so I'd heard about Ripen. U of T wanted to try it out in a number of cases, and they looked to those of us who are always crazy enough to experiment with our classes and said, hey, are you up for this? Would you be part of some sort of pilot to check things out? And I said, sure, but this is my class. I do not have a 20, this is not technically my class, by the way, but it'll give you the idea. I teach an extremely large introduction to psychology class. In fact, it's 1,700 students this term. We don't put them all in the classroom like you see here. It's a mixed delivery method. So some of them do come to class. It's a 500-seat classroom. I'm videotaped while I lecture, and that videotape is converted to streaming video same day. So students can physically attend the class if that's how they like to experience a lecture, or they can watch the class online if they prefer that. And 1,700 students easily fit into a 500-seat lecture hall when you do that. It's new math or something like that. It works. I have about 400 students in class on any given day. Okay. But I have 1,700 students. We can't find 1,700 employers to work in the way we've described. So it seemed at first blush like, no, the Ripen concept is cool, but how can we import it into this class? Well, I wanted to import it in the class, and here's a couple of reasons why. So first of all, the Ripen approach is something that's more generally called authentic assessment. It's asking students to do a project that actually results in something meaningful. Not just write an essay that a TA will read, grade, and throw in a garbage can. This is much more relevant, and we know that students are more engaged and they learn better when the projects they're asked to do have this authentic component. So I like the idea of trying to think of how to bring this into my class. Not just for that, but because my class is a first-year class, I really believe that these first-year classes are critical, that we are in part signaling to students what we value at our university. That very first day when they read the syllabus of their, say in my case, Introduction to Psychology class, what we're kind of telling them is, here's how we're going to give you grades. And when we say that, we're essentially saying, here are the things that matter to us. Here's the sorts of learning that matters to us. So I would love to have a hint of work-integrated learning into my class. I would love to be signaling to students that, we consider developing your career readiness to be part of your university experience. And we want our classes to play a role in your development for that ultimate success in life. So I wanted to do it in my 1,700 student class. It's kind of one of the things I do in my lab is try to think of, how do I take great ideas and scale them up so that anybody can use them. All right, so what are we going to do? So by the way, I just mentioned, that's what I do, that's what we do in the Advanced Learning Technologies lab. So I just throw that up there if you want to. We're always looking for people to participate with, and that's going to be part of the story here too. So if you go to that website and especially follow the Participate in Research link, you can join with us. Okay. So here's the idea we came up with. So first of all, let me start with a typical Ripen idea. First, students learn about and have these ongoing interactions with a corporate partner. They submit some sort of final project to both the class and the corporation, and they get feedback from both, right? So I went through that. That's cool. Here is the revised version. So one of the things that my lab focuses on a lot is peer assessment. We think peer assessment has so much pedagogical power, and we're trying to harness a lot of that in a tool we created called Peer Scholar. So the idea is, can we bring these two things together a little bit? So here's how we do it. We have a corporate partner. In our case, it's going to be Pearson Education. I'll show you a little bit more about their challenge in a moment. But they offered a challenge to the students. Now, what we do is we invite all students, all 1,700, to go ahead and answer that challenge. This is going to be for bonus grades, at 2% specifically, and that's, in my experience, enough to make students interested, make them, potentially willing to kind of play along. So they won't all play along, but hopefully we get a good group, I'll come back to that in a moment, that all submit their original work. They then go through a round of peer assessment. So specifically, they are asked to look at 4 of the compositions that their peers submitted, and they get 100 points, and they have to divvy those up amongst those 4 based on quality. So the highest quality one should get the most points, etc. And so they give their points to those 4. Now, by the way, this process of peer assessment engages critical thinking in a very sort of disciplined and structured way. It's one of the parts of the Peer Scholar experience. And it is the part that really links to the development of critical thinking skills. So this isn't just a means to an end. It is a powerful pedagogical step as well. It does ultimately allow us to have all of those compositions scored. And so we can identify the 10 best submissions. So those 10 are informed that they are among the 10 best, and they're given an option, given their experience now, they've seen other ideas and things, they're given the option to revise their work, and then they forward this to our corporate partner, in our case Pearson. Those 10 are evaluated by the corporate partner. They have prizes for the top 3. And some of them include experiential prizes, so coming into the corporate environment, having lunch with some of the people there, learning a little bit about how it works, for example. That's the first place kind of prize. And so the select group, these 10, are going to have the much more direct interaction with the corporate client. But all of the students are going to be kind of brought into the world a little bit. Okay, so it is a lighter work-integrated learning, but it's a way that'll work in any class. So we were very fortunate. Ripen themselves, there was this Career Ready Fund in Ontario. The Ontario government invested money to try to have more students have some sort of experiential learning experience. And so we won a grant from them. And the grant that we won was explicitly to sort of test out this idea that I just presented to you. And to the extent it seemed to have merit, to build it directly into the Ripen platform so that other people could harness this idea in a very effortless, smooth way. Okay, so we set about doing both of those things over this summer. We created a tool, so this just kind of gives you an idea, and this is where they're reviewing 2 teams. I could show it to you in action, but I actually will not at this point, just to not take the time. But they submit something, then they evaluate various teams as they do so. So the real point of this is, by now, we've built out this tool, and if anybody's interested in trying it, well, we would love for you to try it, and I'll talk to you about that in just a moment. But I do want to let you know a little more explicitly what we've done so far. So here is the challenge given by Pearson's. Important to maybe highlight that um, in my class, we use a Pearson textbook that's based on that Revel platform. And the Revel platform is meant to make learning more interactive, more dynamic, more active, really. And so the students have been using this digital form of the textbook for a while. And basically, what they're being asked to do is to comment. So if you look at the second sentence there, write a paragraph you feel would convince your best friend that your learning experience with Revel is superior to using a traditional textbook. So they're asking them to create an argument in favor of Revel. And gives you a little bit more details about how to do that. And you see all the details there. So we tried this over the summer. Now, over the summer, we didn't have that special tool. So we literally had to use both Peer Scholar and Ripen, have them submit something in Peer Scholar, do their peer assessment in Peer Scholar, and then take what they've done from there and submit it in the Ripen environment. So it was a little clunky in terms of how the technology had to be used, and we knew it would be. We just didn't have the new technology yet. It was a smaller class in the summer, and I should also highlight it's a strange class in the summer. It's a lot of people who failed in the fall, or people who are looking for a way to do an online course in the summer, and so they're in France, but they're taking my course from a distance, etc. So it's not your typical student group, but we did get 20% participating. I think this fall it'll be much higher than that. But we got 20% participating, and the real punchline for this is we went through the process. It all worked. Students seemed to value it. They thought it was kind of neat. They did talk about the technology being, a multiple step kind of thing and not optimal, etc. But it worked. This was really just a proof of concept, and the concept seemed to work. So this fall, in fact, right now, I'm trying the integrated version, the one that we've created, with my 1,700 student class. Again, 2% bonus for participating. We've just got this rolling now. So it's just ongoing with our snazzy integrated interface. So I'm going to have to report back on what happens there. But the hope is, of course, that my students have a smooth experience, and we'll follow up with some qualitative research to try to get at their impressions and whether they felt it enhance their learning and other things like that. Now, where do you come in? Potentially here. What we'd really like to do in the winter is test this in a bunch of different courses. And so what we're looking for, literally, collaborators that would like to try this in their course. And the technology will be provided at no cost, along with support, all that kind of thing. We would love to have, 10 to 20 different professors trying it out in the winter term. And so part of this talk is a pitch. Would you like to participate? And if you would, please reach out to me either through my website or through any of this information. Vision.peerscholar.com, it just tells you about PeerScholar because I alluded it to a little bit. So if you want to learn more there, but right at the bottom, there's my email address. If you would like to be part of a study next term that looks at work integrated learning in your context, whatever that is, then let's do it. All right. So there's my talk. Thank you very much. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend. See you later, LinkedIn community.